Good morning. This is the first edition of the Sinister Archives. This is Anna Maria Manalo coming to you from Pennsylvania, where it is rainy and windy, and it's a perfect setting today for a story about a Thai couple I met while I was traveling with my husband. This comes from tenant farmers in a banana and rice plantation about an hour outside Chiang Mai in the province of Lamphun. Our local guide during an escorted tour told this story when one afternoon a couple of the tourists ventured away from the group. They ended up lost near a desolate road leading to a jungle and had taken a few hours to reorient themselves and find their way back to us. Our tour guide shared a cautionary tale that the tour group will never forget. When we sat down to dinner, he told us about Tia and Paul, who lived in a hut on stilts at the center of the banana plantation that they tended. The area was composed of 80 hectares of land, and they were responsible for maintaining, planting, and harvesting, along with 2 other farm families who live in the same type of dwelling as they did. They lived off the land except for occasional visits to buy fish and other staples in the town's open market. Tia and Paul had a baby boy. They doted on the infant. They had him on a homespun crib in the one and only bedroom in the 2-room shack. The shack was made of bamboo and something called abaca, which is a strong fiber made into rope and finished with banana leaves. The hay and the banana made for a roof crisscrossed by bamboo, and it was lashed securely by poles. These huts were elevated at least 3 feet from the ground to prevent floods from entering, as well as prevent any snakes or monitor lizards, which were very abundant in that region. The huts were usually square in shape with a window on each side to allow for ventilation from the tropical and highly humid heat. Their windows were large and easily shut by a flap made of the same material as the walls, and they were only held open by a bamboo pole. There were no screens to protect from insects. So the story goes, one evening as Tia settled the child into the homemade crib by the open window, she covered the crib with a mosquito net to prevent it from getting flies and mosquitoes, obviously. And then she went back to the main room of the 2-room house. And she noted she needed to gather some water for the dinner preparation. Her husband, Paul, who is a pseudonym, his return from the fields usually meant he needed to wash before sitting to dinner, so she had to get a lot of water. Reluctant to leave the infant alone, she nevertheless had to step out, and she gathered the empty pails and walked several yards to the pump that they used to irrigate the fields. Since her husband was due back any minute, she anticipated that her infant would not be alone for a long period of time. They were situated in a remote part of the plantation, so no one would know their location except for friends, neighbors, and of course the landowner and their parents, who all lived in the town. As Tia stepped down from the hut, she carried 2 pails and a long bamboo stick, and halfway to the water pump, which was an open area of the field several yards away, she noticed bats swooping under the coconut trees and palms. Part of her wondered with concern whether she should shut all the windows in the hut before she left. But meanwhile, true to Tia's anticipation, Paul had returned. And then he was greeted by gurgling from the infant in the next room. And when he entered, he smiled at the still form under the mosquito net, not bothering to uncover it. Minutes went by as Paul tended to the sole gas stove in the kitchen, preparing it for Tia's cooking. He had just scooped rice from boiling, and Tia entered the hut with 2 brimming pails of fresh water from the pump. As soon as she placed the pails down, they heard an unearthly screech, like a banshee coming from the baby's room. Tia dashed to the room. She pulled the mosquito net away and discovered her biggest nightmare had happened. Paul entered behind her as he heard her scream the scream of a distressed mom. In the crib was a creature the size of the baby, but instead of his cherubim face, the face was of a wizened, angry creature, only seen in horror movies with teeth like that of a wolf. His mouth was full of razor-sharp teeth. His eyes were red and glistening with anger. He looked aged and wizened. Tia fainted, and Paul watched the creature get up on two wrinkled legs and leap out the window. Paul believes to this day the creature had abducted or eaten his infant son. It probably laid in wait for them to leave their baby alone. And that is the story about the Tiyanak. A Tiyanak is a demonic entity from within the earth that manifests as an infant to unsuspecting individuals. It is rumored to abduct babies to feast on their blood, only to leave them dead or transformed into the creature this couple encountered in their son's crib. Wanted to let you know that despite the search by the town people, they never did find their infant son or his remains. The couple eventually left the plantation for another job, this time near Tia's parents. Thank you for listening to the first edition of the Sinister Archives. This is Ana Maria Manalo. If you like my stories, there will be more coming, and you can also go on my website, storyartisan.wordpress.com, and the book portal, A Lifetime of Paranormal Experiences, can be purchased from Amazon for more of these types of stories. Thank you for listening in.